All right, hello and welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about how to help a loved one with OCD, and specifically we're going to talk about what to do when the person that we know doesn't want to get help. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Cotty, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm the founder of Restored Minds, along with the creator of the AAA Response. And like I said in this episode, what I want to do is I want to talk about what we can do as loved ones when the person we know who's really struggling with OCD and anxiety doesn't want to get help or doesn't, think they need help. It can be a very challenging situation to be in because oftentimes, again, when that person is in that lens, they don't see the problem as you see it, right? As we see it, right? I mean, when you're in that lens and you're looping on that item, right, or that theme, whatever it is, they are seeing the world in a distorted way, right? And I always show to reference this, I always show that example of Chuck McGill in the show Better Call Saul, where, he is convinced in his mind that he's allergic to electricity. Now in the show, they end up showing him, right, that he actually isn't, right, and, that it's all in his head. But, I mean, when they show what it's like, what his experience is like when he goes outside and is around it, it's like, he sees it in a very distorted way. And if you haven't checked out our free training on that, actually, we have some links right down below where you can get access to that to really get a visual of that, along with, the major shifts that you really need to make to break out of this loop. But anyways, when your loved one is struggling and you see it, right? I mean, the thing is the family, like I said, the family is oftentimes like they suffer just as much often, if not more, because they spend so much time accommodating and trying to help the person. And it, like I said, it usually builds the loop because they're accommodating, reassuring. And so it actually gets worse. But the person that really suffers in silence is the family member usually. In my experience. I mean, don't get me wrong, the person that has OCD and anxiety is suffering, but it doesn't mean that the suffering that the family experiences is any less, because oftentimes their whole lives end up getting built around this one fear. So, to put it straightforward, because this is going to be some difficult stuff to hear sometimes, but when a person doesn't want to get better, the reality is they're not going to, until they decide that something's a problem and that they really need help, nothing's going to change. Okay. You can't force this on people. A lot of times what I've seen, parents and loved ones do is they try to force this on their family member, right? Whether it's on their child, whether it's on their spouse, whether it's on, their brother, sister, I mean, I don't know, name the relationship, right? I've seen it. And the thing is that it doesn't work, right? And oftentimes it just gets more frustrating because the person trying to help thinks they're trying to help, and the person who's, getting this thing forced on them often perceives it as an attack. And so the conflict just starts building. But like I said, the other flip side to that is that if you allow the OCD to just live in your family, and you allow it to grow, and you allow the person just to get worse and worse without getting help, what will happen is, as a family and a loved one, you'll begin to resent them. It's a normal human experience. And I know you're like, I can't resent my child or my partner or, parent, but it's like, it's a natural human experience, because the reason you'll start to resent them is because you're prioritizing their feelings over your own. And if you do that long enough, eventually you just instinctively know you're neglecting yourself, right? And we can only do that so long, as we have to take care of ourselves, right? Self-preservation, like we have to be able to take care of ourselves. And what I've seen happen is, that this OCD loop just grows and grows to the point where it's so intertwined with the house and the relationship that eventually that's when the relationships really blow up and really, in some cases end, right? And ultimately we want to prevent that, right? And it's preventable. And what it comes back down to is setting healthy boundaries, because And oftentimes what I've seen help people make those shifts is when they really see how much this is impacting their life. Because what happens is, as loved ones, sometimes we accommodate so much that the person, even though they know something's going on, if their basic needs are all met, right, then they have no real reason to change. And so I talk a lot about this with parents. So this is really speaking into the more parent-child relationship, because I need you to see it from this context. So if your child, right, let's just say they're late teens, early 20s, right? Because a lot of onset with OCD and anxiety happens in that teenage, early 20s age. And if you are taking care of all their basic needs, right, to the point where it's like they don't have to worry about money, they don't have to worry about shelter, they don't have to worry about food, all their laundry's done, and then you want them to change and get out of, get help with OCD. The reality is there's not really much incentive for them to change. This is what we call secondary gains. Because it's like they have the luxury and time of really doing this, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, support your loved ones and things like this. So there's a real delicate line, and I'm not pretending to be the all-knowing expert of where that is for everyone, right? But what I am saying is you have to ask yourself, like, what are the secondary gains? Because I've seen it time and again where the change actually happens. It's a big paradox, right? The parents want the person to get better so they can go live on their own, right? But sometimes it's having the person leave the house and putting them on their own that really helps them see how much this is really impacting them, that then inspires them to get change or get help and really start to change. And I've seen this before. Again, most of the things in this treatment and recovery are, a huge big paradox, right? And that is the thing to remember here, is that even if your loved one is really struggling, you have to cease accommodation behaviors, right? Because you have to set the idea of long-term recovery as your priority, not their short-term comfort. So if you are doing your loved one's, laundry and just basic stuff, and you're repetitively doing that. I'm not saying it's not okay to help out from time to time, but it's like if you're just always doing everything for them, like eventually resentment is going to set in, and that is when really some permanent damage often is inflicted on the relationship. So to prevent the permanent damage, oftentimes we have to be okay with that short-term conflict, right? The better you are at lower level conflict, the less likely you're going to be to reach high levels of conflict, right? And I think Jordan Peterson said it really well, that a problem ignored is a problem multiplied, right? And it's so true. It's like if we just keep ignoring this and kind of hoping that it will go away, it's like, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, to the point where sometimes, things get really, really bad. So we got to be willing to say, hey, look, and to hold the person to the level at which they're able to live, right? Because oftentimes, this is another thing to consider here, how you see someone is how they will act, right? If you see them as a successful, competent, capable person, they will begin to behave that way. If you see them as incompetent, you see them as that they can't do it, people will start to live up to expectations, both ways, high and low. Right? So as a loved one, it's about holding them to the proper expectations of what they're really capable of, right? And then, setting it up for them to live up to those expectations. And if they just are at a point where they're refusing treatment and refusing to get better, you're going to have to start setting up some kind of plan to eliminate the secondary gains, because they need to see it as a problem. The only way they're ever going to change is they have to see it as a problem. If you accommodate all their basic needs, then they're not going to see it as a problem. But it's like when, the bank account starts to dwindle down and it's like, oh, I need food and stuff like that, and basic needs start to surface up, then the person starts to understand, well, this OCD is really preventing me from doing this, right? And then that's going to get them more in alignment with the idea of getting help. But you have to eliminate those secondary gains to really peel back that and help the person understand that it's a problem, right? Because the first level of change is problem awareness, right? They have to become aware of what the problem is and the fact that they do need help. That's why in AA, right, the first step of AA, right, is acknowledging that you have a problem, right? And if the person is not willing to acknowledge it, then it's your job in many ways as a loved one to start peeling back the layers to the point to let them see that it really is a problem and that it really does need to be addressed. And if you keep accommodating and meeting those needs, you're going to prevent that from happening. And then the resentment starts to build, and then that's when a lot of tension really starts. So it's almost like you got to be willing to go through a lower level of conflict to prevent it from getting really high. And again, that's why, like you heard me talk about in this series again and again, like we got to prioritize the long-term treatment. We got to prioritize long-term recovery, both for the individual and your family unit and yourself. So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully that makes sense. I know it's not always the funnest conversation to have, but it's serious, and it is. And so we have resources obviously down in the notes here, as well as over at restoredminds.com. And we're here to help you on this journey. That's what we do day in, day out. And, that will conclude this particular series on helping a loved one with OCD. And in the next episode, we're going to start a brand new series that I'm super excited about. So thank you guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you so much for watching that video. And so if you're struggling with OCD and anxiety, I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training for you over at Restored Minds, where you can start learning how to use our AAA response to really break out of that loop and ultimately take back control of your life. And all you need to do to access is just click the little link below, and you'll be taken to a page where you can register today. Thank you so much.